This is a 2000 Chevrolet pickup on a K1500 series with a 5.3 liter in it. It's four-wheel drive. It had a problem with losing intermittent amounts of antifreeze on the ground directly underneath the passenger side corner of the engine. And looked underneath of it, and the water pump has a weep hole in it for when the seal goes bad, lets the antifreeze out of it. And it had antifreeze leaking out of the weep hole on the water pump, so it's going to need a water pump install. And first thing I did was take the reserve tank cap off and come around to the driver's side of the radiator, and there's a drain plug with a hose attached on this one. And I backed the plug out, set a drain bucket underneath of it. There's a little over 2 gallons in this. We'll need at least that to catch it. 2.5 gallons with AC. That's some of the belt routings for the engine. The V8, diesel, and a 6-cylinder. But when I've got the antifreeze drained out of it, if you wanted to, since the lower radiator hose has got to come off of it anyway, you could take the lower radiator hose off of it. This is that clamp where the thermostat housing is. But I had this drain loose before. A little risky taking the drains loose on radiators these days. But this one wasn't bad. You could wait, and the fan shroud's got to come off anyway and get better access to that lower radiator hose with the fan shroud removed and the air cleaner out of the way. I went ahead and drained this one, so I'm going on through with the process. I'll go ahead and take the hose clamp loose on the air cleaner to throttle body, and take hose clamp loose off the air cleaner housing behind the mass airflow sensor, and unplug the mass airflow sensor. Got a hose support clamp underneath of it. Just push this bleeder hose out of the bottom part and then snap the top. You can take the whole thing out, I guess. I just hate wearing those ribs out that holds it in there. Kind of have to take a screwdriver and walk around and break the seal on this a little bit. And this one up here too. It's kind of sticky. Just don't break any of your idle air control or throttle position sensor plug-ins. They will break. Fish this hose out from underneath of it. Make sure the bleed line's clear. Mass airflow sensor's unplugged. And it's got a big dog leg hanging off of it. Be sure not to damage this screen on the mass airflow sensor, or you'll have problems. It's like a honeycomb pattern. Rubber seal could either went with the air cleaner or stayed on it. It's really easier to mount it on the air cleaner pipe before you install it. However, it wants to come off with the hose clamp. It will always be to the top on it. double ribbed and the air cleaner pipe goes in there, and you have to make sure it's set all the way in that rib and not like bunched up, and you'll have a problem with it running if it gets air bypassing. And it's an opportune time to clean the throttle body if it's coked up. This one's surprisingly pretty clean, so no problems. Taking the old antifreeze and putting it back into antifreeze jugs, and take it to one of the local parts stores. They recycle it. Do not put the antifreeze on the ground, spill it, or have it around any animals. It is detrimental to anything, so it should be cleaned up if it's spilled anywhere and recycled. Next thing I want to do is work on this upper radiator hose. Took a little screwdriver and stuck it in side hole to collapse this spearhead on the end of that. Get the hose free from this upper radiator shroud. And I'll take a pair of pliers, back this hose clamp off of this upper housing pipe. This hose is probably going to be stuck to that pipe pretty good. Just get up underneath it with a screwdriver and walk it around and get it broke loose. I'll go ahead and take this air bleed line from its hangers and let it lay back out of the way. Walk this hose off. I'll pick this hose up a little bit so no antifreeze falls out. Lay it out of the way or whatever. A little bit. Don't stress it out too much, it'll damage the radiator. Now that the upper fan shroud's free and clear to navigate, there's 4 push pins, 2 on each side, holding the top to the bottom. Get underneath the heads of them with a pair of diagonals. Pull these pins up, pop them out, 2 on each side, and then 2 10mm, one on this corner, one on this corner. Take them out. These push pins, essentially, as you pull the center up, it makes the other end smaller. And typically, as you're pulling up on the center, it'll get small enough the whole thing will come up out of the holes. And throw them on the glove pile. And once your 10mm are out, just dislodge the upper fan shroud and toss it on the pile. Now we can see what's going on down in there. That whole outfit is the water pump. And while you're in here, it's an opportune time. Any of the hoses are super soft or swelled up, replace them, especially that big one. This one's still pretty rigid, surprisingly. I'm going to go ahead and get this fan blade out of the way. Check and make sure it's got some drag on it. If it's just freewheeling, it needs replaced. This part on the end does. Clutch. Leaving the belt hooked up. We got the special tools and want to spend the time. Hook them up now. There's 4 holes in the pulley and a thin tool with 4 pegs or 2 pegs slips into those holes to hold the pulley, and then a skinny big wrench goes on the nut, and then you can break it loose. It's only torqued to 41 foot-pounds, supposedly anyway, so about the fastest way to do it. Just take a big crescent wrench, about a 12 inch or so, Slip it on that nut. It's got the press wrench on there and it's tied around the nut. I just leave the belt hooked up to help hold the pulley in place. If you're doing it this way and you're clumsy or something, cover your radiator up with cardboard. It's really not a big deal. I mean, it is a little hazardous to this area. Let's take a sledgehammer and whack this so the press wrench is going toward the passenger side. And that loosens the nut up most of the time. And you just spin the fan off there. You gotta put both hands on it so it don't fall into the radiator and tear it up. Make sure the nut's spinning off with it. Get so that there's, see, 3 or 4 threads and it'll be ready to drop. Like that. I always store the fan in this position. They say it ruins the clutches to lay them face down, but it seems like you buy them that way. I don't know. But hey, whatever. This is an opportune time to check your belts for cracks, thin places, and wear. And the air conditioner belt and the tensioner pulley is typically bad, where the arm is. I'll be checking that out too. Check the idler pulleys and the tensioner arm for being sticky or wearing at an angle, or the pulley being bad. It is tilted just a little bit. This seam to the top. Look at your belt routing and remember which way it goes, although this one still has a diagram on it, but you just never know. Comes off the crank, goes back around the water pump to the power steering pump, up the alternator, under idler pulley into the tensioner pulley. And I put a 15mm wrench on it. And push the tensioner toward the center of the engine and slip the belt off the idler pulley. If you're reusing the belt, mark the direction it goes back on. Alright, the alternator and an arrow pointing this way. Or an abbreviation for it. Get it out of the way. Really don't want any antifreeze contact in the belts. Just remember that when a belt goes on there, it wraps around the dampener first, and then the back of it starts around the water pump, then down to the power steering pump. Pulley really should keep going. It's not noisy. That's pulley still usable, I guess. Check its tensioner arm for smoothness and no binding. It seems like it's alright, but this pulley's a little stiff. I'm going to go ahead and remove these 3 bolts holding the tensioner pulley assembly to the water pump housing. $15mm. Just always be aware of your radiators right there, or it can get in trouble. Offhand, you can see the weep hole in the water pump and the liquid has been coming from it. Now it's going to get a little messy. I'm going to lay a piece of plastic over top of this air conditioner pulley and belt and the crank dampener to keep the antifreeze from getting on the pulleys, making the belts chirp. About anything will work as long as it'll shed water. And you want to kind of steer it and put a drain pan underneath. Bend the plastic around the pulleys and the belt. And give it a place to go, controlled. Anywhere but the belts. I'll set a big drain pan underneath the right corner of the engine. Heater hose clamps. I took a pair of pliers and squeezed these smaller hose clamps and walked them back with a screwdriver and compressing them. And took a screwdriver and walked the hoses back. Get their seals broke. Take these 2 10mm bolts out, because you got to change this thermostat housing anyway. New water pump housing. And make sure you got a drain pan underneath of it. This is an opportune time to install a brand new factory thermostat. I put this one in last year. Go ahead and pick this O-ring out, because it'll need a new one. I'll go ahead and set it up out of the way. Get these other heater hoses off slow. A little bit of antifreeze. The hoses really can't mix them up. One tube's larger than the other. And a return and inlet, outlet. This is a new contraption here. Comes this whole piece. Heater hoses, thermostat housing. I'm going to go ahead and take out, there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts holding this housing to the engine. Make sure there isn't any damage on these sealing surfaces on either side. Any severe damage leading to the outside. There's 3 here and 3 over here. Remove those 10mm headed bolts and hang on to it when you're taking the last I'll probably take the lower two out on each side and then start loosening up the upper two. I'll hold on this outfit so it don't fall into the radiator. All 6 bolts are out. They're all the same length. Just slide this contraption out of there and keep it tilted up, keep antifreeze off the crank dampener. Now set this in the drain pan and let it drain. Kind of grungy. If the vehicle has excess mileage on it, this would be an opportune time to go ahead and change the timing chain in it. Go ahead and clean all that crud off of there and clean those mounting surfaces. Get all the old gasket material off of them and all the crud build up around them. I've let that drain some and gently rock the truck back and forth to get some of the excess antifreeze out of the block so it doesn't run it down on my gasket surface. And that keeps it from weeping out so it doesn't mess up my gasket seal. Mouse over the video and hit the circle I to continue to part 2 of the video.